model. So was this plane is an A380, and this was the biggest passenger plane in the world. It had 4 giant engines. And my favorite part, and I also like this plane, was the sections in the whole plane. This bigger than the 747 model. It's also bigger in real life. But it's just a small model. If it was bigger, it might look good. And anyway, there was actually a true airplane. This actually in real life. It's the Airbus A380-800. And my favorite part of this one was actually about the flights. And then this was Lufthansa in Germany. And my favorite part, this plane doesn't even crash at once. And this was called the safest passenger airplane in the world because it doesn't crash. And there's a talk, yeah, it doesn't actually real, but I did hasn't had any talk ads, so I just used this for one of them. And then the bus. Yeah, this bus was bigger. It could close the doors. It opened it, and this is the section of it. And we open underneath because there has some things that looks okay. You can look through it, and you get these parts attached to the doors, so you can open it like this. You just need to attach. You just need to do like this. You put your hand here and it open, close. The doors do the same thing. So you don't need to do like this. They just make it open. So, yes. So it will be easier to open, close, and I will have an airplane, Lego airplane after this, like few days or few days later, and I also had this plane. This is not based on real plane, but it was just a background plane. So the A380, yeah, this had airliners, and this had the same landing gear as 747, except for the very back. The back landing gear of 747 looked like this, but this was like the 777 landing gear, but there was a lot of landing gears in this one. And yeah, I forgot to talk about the wingtips. And these the horizontal stabilizers. And this the rudder is like the tail rudder. Yeah, the tail rudder was this part, and this the tail. And the inside of the nose were always the same as the other planes was radar. So, and these planes had a lot of doors. A380, A787, and had automatic doors. Press one button and the doors close. Yeah, and I forgot to talk about this. So this is supposed to be an electricity plane, but it does have engines and bags. That doesn't make sense, but that doesn't mean now I will not use it. I need this because this is the only bus I have. So, and I also like these wheels. This wheels, and this was like I see world. This like under the sea. Yeah, this just a bus. Like this looks like a bus. China, I guess. You know, because the word is kind of similar to Chinese or Japanese. And then, yeah. So, this looks like the bus that carry people to a trip. There's a lot of different bus. And the bus that carries passengers to airport was like airport bus. So, the passengers in the terminal sometimes go in here. So this part, you can go in the airport by not using a bus. And you can even have food in the terminal, so you won't get hungry because some flights were hot. So they did have first class, and my favorite was the second part. You know, the second deck is super good. Actually, the top deck was the first class, and the underneath just the normal class. And the thing that I scared when flying was turbulence, and something makes the airplane have an emergency landing or will cause the airplane to crash. Like tail rudder collapsed, and when the tail rudder collapsed, there had two crashes of the tail rudder broke out. American Airlines 587 did crash because that. The crash was a pilot error. Was because the first officer turned the rudder too much at turbulence, and then the tail fell down. That is Japan Airlines Flight 123. Yeah, you also can call it 123. So the Japan Airlines Flight 123 is crashed with structural failure because Japan Airlines Flight 155 got broke because tail strips every years. 7 years earlier, but Boeing did fix it, but they would fix it wrong. So that's why the airplane crashed with 520 people died with only 4 survivors, and they are big injured. And back to the Japan Airlines 155 was actually Japan Airlines 123. And then the tail shrink actually happens in Japan. And there are 2 minor injuries. And there's some normal injuries. Maybe two of the people in the tail will got minor injuries because the tail strip actually did was like this. Tail hit the runway super hard, which caused something sparkles like fire went out in nowhere, and the tail broken. So Boeing companies in Japan, they fix it, but they don't fix it correctly. So when that died, some years later, the bulkhead really got destroyed. The bulkhead was in the tail. So when the destroyed, the bulkhead got broken, and they just repaired it or changed a new one. And 7 years later, the airplane really crashed right down. So they did fix it. They had a lot of flights until the Japan Airlines were 123. So it was one of the worst crash in history of Japan. So it's the worst crash history of Japan. So, but I tell you what happened was the worst crash in the whole world. There's no crash in the whole world that can unfortunately, then the terrified airport disaster is like the worst crash ever. Like 2.747 hit each other on one tiny runway in terrified. Yeah, they call it a terrified airport disaster. It's just a part Spanish, but actually that was not a clue. Actually, they actually fog in the KOM and thought they were clear to take off. And just like 155, they had a tail streak before hitting the Pan Am. So the Pan Am was on the runway, and then the KOM just hit right on top of it. Everyone, sadly, everyone in the KOM died, with only 61 survivors in the Pan Am. And then that was so sad. And so the A380 did that 80 crash, but the J123, back with J123, it stole. They are 3 pilots there, and they were heroes, but the airplane did crash. Because they keep the airplane with no tail in 30 minutes. And the pilot did have last words, which is pretty sad. And the airplane, and then there was a lot of 47 freight crashes, and there has a lot of freight crash. Actually, there were actually some disaster. Like Trace Aya, and then the airplane, it kind of stole the propeller plane. So, and then when it stole, it hit a taxi on a bridge, and it crashed right into the ocean. And there, even the car near the crash, it really hit the taxi. And then the airplane crashed into the ocean. I don't know who survived, but there was a big chance of everyone can die that time. In the terrified, and then so the airplane crashed into the ocean, and Airplane 90 had the same thing, but it was pilot error. I don't know what happened to Dress Area, but pilot error used to be it. The airplane is like this, and it's stalling when it takes off. It's stalling until it eventually hit the bridge with its tail. And then it hit the bridge with its cars in there, and then it crashed. There are actually 6 survivors, but actually now only 5. Because one of them was helping 5 of the people, and that guy was drowned because he helped other people until he himself get drowned too. Emergency rescue came super fast, but and the wreckage was found out. The only wreckage was found with the tail. And there also a crash that happened in the ocean. It actually was Alaska 261 in it's just on the back plane. So in the AV80, it just gets to one of the tail parts broke down here, and the airplane goes down. It get fixed, but now the whole part of horizontal stabilizers are broke down. So the airplane got deep bait. The pilots tried to save the plane, and the airplane turned upside down. And then the ocean was ahead, and the airplane crashed into the ocean, and everyone died. of water landings that's in the miracle. It was US Airways 1549. So the airplanes, the A320, it hit birds. All engine was out. And then the airplane was like, can go back to LaGuardia Airport or go to a near airport. But they cannot reach it correctly. So the only thing in front of them was the Hudson River. So they can land the Hudson River, but they have to avoid a bridge. They like crashing a bridge. They with enough time, they cannot survive. But if they put a little bit, they might get it stalled. So the pilots, so the airplane go through the bridge. A lot of people can't see that. And the airplane landed perfectly in the ocean. Doesn't even break apart. And everyone evacuated safely. And then the airplane sank. But luckily, all 555 people on board survived. And they survived each other because of the cold. And our engines, and then the safety board was. And the safety board was talking about the pilots. The plane came land at the nearest airport. But it actually not. They actually cannot land like that. They actually cannot land the airplane at the airport. And then they found the engine at the left was actually still controlled, but it actually still broke. Okay, so the Hudson was a perfect thing. Was the perfect choice, but it's super hard. So because airplane, and that was a miracle because the airplane doesn't make for landing the water, only water airplanes. So water airplanes doesn't have landing gear, so the landing waters. But that was supposed to a normal airplane, not prepared airplane. But prepared airplane have to some prepared airplane land in the ocean, but jet engine airplane